Okay, lesson 8.10, solving nonlinear systems. A nonlinear system. A nonlinear system of equations is a system in which at least one of the equations is nonlinear. Nonlinear means not a line. So an example of this is if we were to graph or have a system of y equals x squared plus 2 and y equals x plus 3, we know if we graph y equals x squared plus 2, we're going to get a parabola. And I know we're going to get a parabola because our x is squared, which means it's quadratic. Okay? If I were to graph y equals x plus 3, I would get a line. Okay? This is a nonlinear system. Okay? A system of a linear equation and a quadratic equation can have no solution. That means if I graph both of them, they never intersect, so there's no solution. Or they could have one solution. They're going to intersect at one point. Or they can have two solutions. That means the line and the parabola intersect at two different points. Okay. So let's learn how to solve a nonlinear system. Example 1 says solve a nonlinear system by graphing. Okay, so first thing is we're going to graph this quadratic function here. And I'm going to bring up my table. Okay. I would graph that in my calculator if I were you. X squared minus 2x minus 3. And then I'm going to bring up my table so I can get some points. I can see that when x is negative 2, y is 5. When x is negative 1, y is 0. This is 0, y is negative 3. X is 1, y is negative 4. X is 2, y is negative 3. And when x is 3, y is 0. Okay, I think those are plenty points. And we can come over here and graph. So I have negative 2, 5. Negative 1, 0. 0, negative 3. 1, negative 4. 2, negative 3. 3, 0. I know that's going to produce a parabola because the x is squared. Alright, now let's graph y equals negative x minus 1. So let's graph this equation right here in our calculator. Negative x minus 1. Bring up your table. When x is negative 3, y is 2. X is negative 2, y is 1. X is negative 1, y is 0. 0, negative 1. 1, negative 2. 2, negative 3. I think I'll stop there. So I have negative 3, 2. Negative 1, 0. I have negative 2, 1. At that point. Negative 1, 0. 0, negative 1. 1, negative 2. 2, negative 3. You connect those points. You know it's going to be a line because your x is not squared. I can see the solution to this is at this point right here and at this point right here. That's where they intersect. That's where your parabola intersects your line. So I have negative 1, 0 as a solution, and I have 2, negative 3 as a solution. If you look at your table, they both contain the points negative 1, 0, and they both contain the points 2, negative 3. There's your solution. Okay, example 2, solve by substitution. Substitute means we're just going to plug in one variable for the other. So I know that looking at this bottom equation, I know that y equals x plus 2. I'll label my equations. I'm going to substitute equation 2 into equation 1. So since y equals x plus 2, I'm going to plug this x plus 2 up here for this y. So I'm going to end up on equation 1, I'm going to get x plus 2 equals 2x squared minus 3x plus 4. And from here, I'm going to solve for x. So to solve, I'm going to have to set this equal to 0, which means I'm going to have to subtract x from each side and subtract 2 from each side. So subtract x, subtract 2. Those cancel out. That leaves me with 0 equals 2x squared. Negative 3x minus x is negative 4x. 4 minus 2 gives me plus 2. Okay, so now to solve this quadratic equation, I would use the quadratic formula like we have in the past. So my quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. That's nothing new. You've already learned how to use it. My value of a. I know that a equals 2, b equals negative 4, c equals positive 2. Then we're just going to plug in. I'm going to have x equals negative 4 plus or minus square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 2 all divided by 2 times 2. So I get x equals negative becomes positive, so 4 plus or minus square root, and I'm just going to put everything inside there, just simplifying. So I'm going to have negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 2. I get 0 divided by 4. So my two solutions are going to be x equals 4 plus the square root of 0 divided by 4, or x equals 4 minus the square root of 0 divided by 4. Square root of 0 is 0, so I have 4 plus 0, which is 4, divided by 4, I get 1. 4 minus 0 is 4, 4 divided by 4 is again 1. There's my two solutions. I know that x is 1. Okay, how do I find my y? Well, since all that came from equation 1, I'm going to plug in my value of x into equation 2. So I get y equals 1 plus 2, which is 3. There's your solution. Okay, example 3. We're going to solve by elimination. Eliminate means we're going to get rid of. Well, to get rid of a variable, you have to line all your variables up. So I'm going to leave equation 1 the same. Equation 2, I'm going to line it up. I'm going to have y equals x squared plus 1. Eliminate means get rid of. So let's get rid of these y's. I know I'm going to have to add these together to get rid of, because a negative plus a positive cancels out. So I'm adding all the way across. I'm going to drop down my 4x. My y's cancel out. Equals x squared plus 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay. So from here to solve, I'm going to have to set it equal to 0 by subtracting 4x from each side. So I get 0 equals x squared minus 4x plus 3. Let's solve this quadratic equation by factoring. Because my factors of x squared are x and x. My factors of 3 added together have to be -4, so I'm going to say -1, -3. So I'm going to have 0 equals x minus 1 times x minus 3. This is now in the form a times b equals 0. Therefore, my a has to be 0 or my b has to be 0. So I would say x minus 1 equals 0 or x minus 3 is going to equal 0. Add 1 to each side, so x equals 1. There's one solution. Add 3 to each side, so x equals 3. There's your second solution. So I have 2 points right now. X is 1, x is 3. How do I find my y? I know that y equals x squared plus 1. So my first solution, I'll say x is 1, so I would have y equals 1 squared plus 1, which gives me 2, so my y is 2. Second solution, I'm going to have y equals 3 squared plus 1, which gives me 10. There's 2 solutions to this system. Example 4, our physics application. It says we can solve quadratic systems, nonlinear systems, by determining when two items are going to reach the same height. Well, in our physics application, we're dealing with an elevator. We are also dealing with a ball. And it says, hold on here. It says an elevator is rising at a constant rate of 20 feet per second. Its height in feet after t seconds is given by h equals 20t. Okay? At the instant the elevator is at ground level, a ball is thrown upward with an initial velocity of 80 feet per second from ground level. The height in feet of the ball after t seconds is given by h equals -16t squared plus 80t. Find the time it takes for the ball in the elevator to reach the same height. Okay, I know t is my time in seconds. I know h is my height because it tells me all that. I want to find out when these reach the same point. When do they reach the same height? So in other words, when do they intersect each other? Okay, well, let's find that. I would use substitution in this case. I would take this 20t. I know h equals 20 times t, and I'm going to plug it in for this h over here. Okay, so I'm going to have 20t equals -16t squared plus 80t. Solve, I have to set it equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 20t from each side. I'm going to get 0 equals -16t squared plus 60t. You can solve any quadratic equation by several methods, but the surefire way, if you can't remember, is I'm going to solve for t, so I'm going to say t equals, and I'm going to use the quadratic formula, which is -b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I know you're used to seeing this as x equals, but in this case I'm solving for t, so I'm going to change it to t equals. I know my value of a is -16. I know my b is 60. I don't have a constant, so my c is going to be 0. Now we're just going to plug in. So t is going to equal -60 plus or minus square root of 60 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 0, all divided by 2 times negative 16. Simplify that, I'm going to have t equals negative 60 plus or minus square root of 60 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 0. I get 3600, all divided by negative 32. So my two solutions are going to be t equals negative 60 plus the square root of 3600 divided by negative 32, or negative 60 minus the square root of 3600 divided by negative 32. So in my calculator, I'm going to say negative 60 plus the square root of 3600, enter, divided by 2, t equals 0. Or negative 60 minus the square root of 3600 divided by negative 32. T is going to equal 3.75. So I know that it's going to take 3.75 seconds for the elevator and the ball to reach the same height. Okay, that's it for today's lesson.